The subcommittee will come to order. Without objection, all members may have 5 days to submit statements, questions, extraneous materials for the record, subject to the length limitation in the rules. The United States is now the largest crude oil producer in the world. We have more oil than we can refine or store. A majority of U.S. refineries were built to handle heavy sour crude, but new oil production is light sweet crude. United States refineries cannot keep up with the new production. Normally, producers would simply pump oil into storage containers, but experts say those storage tanks could fill up before the end of this very month. Instead of exporting excess oil like producers get to do in other nations, the ban is already forcing U.S. oil producers to leave oil in the ground and lay off workers. About 50% of the working rigs in my home state of Texas have had to shut down in just the last 6 months. 70,000 oil workers have been laid off since Thanksgiving. The solution to this problem is clear. Export crude oil, have the ban lifted so that it can be exported. Critics of lifting the ban are afraid the United States oil exports will lead to higher domestic gas prices. However, many studies have debunked this myth. Gas prices are more closely linked to the international market or Brent price than the domestic price of crude because refined products like gasoline are traded freely on the international market. So the more crude oil we have, the more we can put on the international market, the lower the international price of crude. The lower the international price of crude, the lower the price of gas for America. A Rice University study released in March of 2015 reviewed previous studies that examined the impact of removing the ban on gas prices. They found that all studies underscore the lifting of the export ban will not translate into higher gasoline prices. In fact, studies generally project gasoline prices in the U.S. will fall once the ban is lifted." End of quote. U.S. crude entering the global market will increase the international oil supply and decrease the price of gas. The only thing the studies do not agree on is just how much the gas prices will drop. Lifting the ban will also lead to more jobs and a higher GDP. An IHS study predicts crude oil exports would support nearly 300,000 jobs by 2018. Removing the export ban would add $26 billion to the GDP per year and improve labor income about $158 per year on average. As it improves the U.S. economy, removing the ban will also improve our national security. The original purpose of the ban, put back in 1973, was to insulate the United States from the volatility of the international oil market. Ironically, today the ban exposes the United States market to volatility. If ISIS continues to wreak havoc and disrupts oil prices in places like Libya and Iraq, having more U.S. crude oil on the market would help prevent a spike in the price of crude oil and gas prices. Lifting the ban would free us up to help our allies. Europe gets 40% of its oil from Russia. Exporting crude oil will give the Europeans an alternative to having to depend on Russia. It also increased our influence in Asia. Japan and South Korea partly rely on crude oil from Iran to satisfy their growing energy consumption. U.S. exports can help diminish that reliance. It is ironic to me, with the so-called deal with the Iranians, it is now the U.S. government's long-term policy to allow Iran to export crude oil and inject billions of dollars in their own economy. At the same time, it's still the U.S. government policy to prohibit American producers for doing the same. It seems to me what's good for the Iranian oil exports should be the same deal that the United States oil producers get. U.S. exports offer a stable of energy to our allies and decrease their reliance on dictators and state sponsors of terror. Lifting the ban shows the U.S. is serious about supporting free markets around the world. We criticize China for not exporting rare earth materials, and yet we are not exporting crude oil. Removing the ban will give us more credibility when we criticize export bans in other nations. All in all, it's time we remove the crude oil export ban. Exporting crude oil will lower gas prices, increase American jobs, and strengthen our national security. And that's just the way it is, to coin a phrase. I will now yield to the ranking member, Mr. Keating from Massachusetts, for his opening statement.